Learning about Gemara. Today's daf is Kuf Mem Tes. We are up to daf Kuf Mem Tes of the Aleph, few lines from the top of the page. We're continuing to discuss the rules of a Shchimera, somebody who's dying, and he gives instructions, and we say that that Divrei Shchimera Kiksuvim Musundam, even though no transaction was actually made, but whatever he says has to be carried through. And then the last thing we learned above was different expressions he uses that for a shchivmera, we say that his intent was that the person should have it. In an ordinary case, it wouldn't be so, but by a shchivmera, that was his intent. And the last thing we asked was what his intention was. In a case where he says, I want you just to enjoy something, did he really mean just to enjoy it? Or he meant in his way, it's yours. Now we have a question. One important rule is that by a shchivmera, when is it treated as a shchimera? Only if he distributes all of his assets. By distributing all of his assets, it's clear that in his own mind he thinks this is the end. So therefore, you don't need a transaction, you don't need a kinyan. His words are sufficient. And as a result, if he recovers, then everything unravels and it all gets returned to him because this is clear what his intention was. But if it's a matana b'mikzas, he only gives away part of it. Even then, we learned in the Mishnah, if he left behind the slightest amount, that means he expects to survive. Then two things: a kinyan needs to be made in order for any of these transactions to be considered valid, because no longer the takana shchimra is not existing. And if he recovers, imamad eino chayzer, he cannot change his mind. So now I'm going to ask a question: the person was dying and he sold all of his assets in exchange for money. So on the one hand, all of his assets. Why would he just all leave nothing behind? On the other hand, he left money behind. Well, you're right, because that's the question. Maybe he wants to give his tzedakah or whatever it is. As we'll soon see, maybe he wants to pay off his loans. So before he dies. So how do we view that? On the one hand, he sold, he made a kinyan, but all of it, left nothing for himself. On one occasion, he says, "Imamad einu chayzer." This is the fact is he sold it. He made a real kinyan and he got money in exchange. That means they treat it like any other kinyan. Once it's done, it's done. Zimni namar Rav, but on other occasions, Rav Yehuda said, "Imamad chayzer." We treat it like a matna shchimra because he gave all of it away, and therefore, if he changes his mind, if he recovers, he could change his mind. But like pligi, there's no argument. Hadi isnu luzuze beinayu. We're about 7 lines on the top of the page. So the person sold his entire estate. It depends. Actually, 2 ways of learning Rishonim, but learning like the Rishban and others. If the money is still sitting there in his house, he sold everything for money. Why does he still have all the entire a lot of money? Obviously, he's holding it in case he recovers. He'll give the money back, and he'll get his properties back. So therefore, we say that im amad chayz. But if he spent the money and he used it to pay off his chayvus, then that's why he did it. And therefore, we say that it's not considered matna shchivra. There was a cheshbon. He wanted to pay back all his loans, and he has to pay back all his loans. And therefore, imamad ein chayze cannot change it. Doesn't unravel. Okay, iboiluhu. We have an interesting question. Ashchiv mera shahida. Ashchiv mera. He was dying, and he was moided. By the way, the money you see here sitting there. This money belongs to someone else. Not my money. Even though you think it's mine, it's not my money. Mahu. Do we believe him or not? And this is in light of another Gemara we're going to learn in Sanhedrin. The Gemara there has a very interesting description. Gemara has a lot of interesting descriptions. A very rich person who's a big miser. The Gemara calls him an achbara de shachve adinri. A mouse that sleeps on his money. What pleasure does a mouse have from his money? Nothing. And this Gemara doesn't spend his money on himself. What pleasure does he have from his money? Absolutely nothing. So that's an achbad shachadin. If before he died, he tells his children, by the way, that this money you see over here, I owe it to somebody else, the Gemara says we don't believe him. Because Adam Shalayla has as banat. It's common. We have as well. That sometimes people don't want the kids to have. That's right. That's the kids. When their own kids, they don't want the kids to have too much money. Or they shouldn't think that the kids shouldn't be rich. It's what's that rich man there? On a great stockbroker that is worth billions and billions of dollars, and he gave each one of his kids 10 million. And he said, "That's it. The rest you got to work for yourself." I mean, that 10 million is not bad, but never. Yeah, I forgot his name already. Buffett. That's it, Buffett. So So the question is, when do we say, and this is actually not in the Gemara here, this is in the Rishonim, when do we say that we don't believe the person, he wants to treat himself as poor, and when do we say that we do believe him? So one of the differences is, some want to say the difference is that if the money is right here in front of us, then we say that we believe him, that maybe it's somebody else's, they gave it to him as a pekadon. If the money is not here, and he's saying, we owe money to this person, then we don't believe him at all, and that person cannot come to the children and say, hey, your father was murdered, he owes me $100, give me $100. The Rashbam here and other Rishonim say, if you they say no. Others say so. Others say, we're talking about, if we knew that this guy was rich, then we don't believe him. If this guy was not rich, but he's an average person, then we do believe him that maybe Taka owes the money to somebody else. But the Rashbam has an expression here, and other Rishonim as well, that nobody would make Eved Loiva Ishmael. That this person is saying right before he dies that he's not stam a poor person, that he's an Eved Loiva. Lish Malvin, the Taita, we describe the as a loiva in a terrible position. We don't believe you to put yourself in that position. But if you're saying it's a pekadon, that someone else's money is sitting by me, you're not making yourself into an eved, then we do believe him. So the question is, do we believe him or not? Toshma, coming in. The Gemara tells an interesting story. Isser Giyada. Now, who exactly is this Isser Giyada? We'll see in a minute. Isser was a ger. Havele Treiser Alpha Zuzanish Kosher. He had 12,000 dinars. Obviously, a very wealthy man. But he owned no property. Now, this is pretty amazing. He was very cash rich, but he didn't invest in any property. Bay Rava, and he had to give it to someone he trusted. He, he gave it to Rava. What a mistake. Just because someone's a Talmid Chacham doesn't mean when it comes to money, they behave the same way, as we'll see. He gave the money to Rava to mine for him. So it's an astonishing story. When you read the story, in today's way of thinking, it's an astonishing story. Rav Mori Brei, Rav Mori, he had a son, Isagi had a son. He was conceived when his father was still a goy, and Vileidasav was born as a yid. Now, who was this Rav Mori? Throughout Shas, we have a Rav Mori that's the son of the daughter of Shmuel. So there's a big machlekes Rishonim. Is this the same person? Because there's many Rishonim. That's exactly what this is. I remember Rashi learns that way as well. She was taken captive. Remember the story in Ksubas of she was taken captive. Issa was one of the goyim who took her in captivity and had relations with her. And then, remember the story in Ksubas, she came and she said, you wait outside. She went to the Beis HaMedrash, because normally we say that she cannot marry a kohen because we believe that something happened. She went into the Beis HaMedrash, and she said, there's Beisi, but to Haidani. And we said she has a Pesha also, that's what we learned, the Pesha also, Pesha Hitter. We believed her. And then later he was Megaya, and because she was pregnant, he was Megaya, and their son was Amori, a big Amori. Yeah. But, so that's one pshat. And that's what this was. Others have a big problem with that, because the Gemara in Ksubas is clearly the whole idea of Pesha Asa is he's saying the truth. And here you tell me it was a lie. So it flies in the face. The whole reason why we're supposed to believe her is because we believe they're saying the truth. And she was deceptive and cunning because she was already pregnant. She did have a relation with this guy Isser. They can't believe it. So therefore they say this is a different person altogether. And then we have another, at the end, this case here looks like he learned there were 3 different mothers. All of them had Gadim fathers. And now, so what happened was, the problem is, if you're Hirasa Shalei Begdusha, then you're this child is not a child of the of Yisr. It has to be Hirasa Begdusha, which means it's not the Yoda, she's nothing. Yep. So even though the later was. Now we say when certain dinim, we say as long as his mother's a yid, for Machlek Zashi takes him if he can be in a position of authority. But if the Baal's Yodish, no, the Tater says a goy does not a gay does not yash. So interesting. And this is important for later to show you. A goy yashins mahatayda. We had that in Kedushin of Yuchester. A yid obviously yashins, we learn the whole time. But a ger doesn't yashins. He's in no man's land. Nishta goy and nishta yid, as far as Yerusha is concerned. Okay, anyway, he had $12,000. He wanted to give it to his son. Ubei Rav had it. Rav Mari was a yeshiva bacher, learning in yeshiva. So, Omar Rava says, I'm going to find every possible way to keep that money for myself. Because when a ger dies, what happens to his assets? They come hefkin. Rav Mari wasn't around to be Zaychi. He's in yeshiva learning somewhere. I'm going to make sure I keep the money. Now, he's going through every step. What could Rav Isa do to be kinder? And I'm going to make sure he does not. Number one, Rav Mari, how is Rav Mari going to be kinder from his father this money? Pasha, he's a son, not by Yerusha. He's not by Yerusha. Matana, so Isa can always give a matna shchivra. Matna shchivra kirusha shavirabon. A matna shchivra is treated like a Yerusha. Call heichadisi birusha Isa matana. If you're a Yiddish, then you can give you as a matana. But call heichad less birusha. If you're not able to Yiddish, less of a matana. These two lines the Gemara, the Rishonim have a hard time, and very interesting. I'll read you a nice lesson from the Rambam. The Hasaga said the Div comes along. Okay, let me just say the Div comes along and has a shot like this. Him and the Rabbi going, which all Rishonim have a hard time understanding. He says, if you use the word matana if a person is dying, and use matana, we learned before, he really means Yerusha. We said before in the Gemara yesterday, all the different Lashonis, he means Yerusha because he's dying and he's throwing it to his son. But because over here, this son is not a Yiddish, so therefore he used the word matana, can't be Yerusha. But where's the Kenyan? Nothing happened here. So therefore nothing happens. So it's a Lashon. All about the Lashon. Anyway, the Ravid and there's two Hasagas Ravid, the Ravid, the Ramban, everyone goes to town. But the interesting thing is, I'll tell you in a second what most Hashem. But the Ramban, usually the Ramban attacks the Ravid who attacks the Rif. Here the Ramban says a very important thing. He said, Ma'ata now, Chimiya Saraibid, bottle time on my everything he said is bottle. Oh, that's all right. That's Galas. That's that is. The M is, but this is very nice. He says, the words that others use, including Raibid, Noyim Ladarshan. Fadrush, beautiful. If you learn the Torah of Hashem Tarif, is Keshaise Yayin Yoshin. That's the real McCoy, drinking good old wine. When you learn the Shainim, it's Keshaise Yayin Yoshin. Nice lotion. One day I'll read you what the Rabbi writes about the Balma. The hair will stand on their head. But anyway, in Sakar Hashanah. Everyone else went try like this. And this is how they explain. The whole idea, remember, a matna shchivna does not take effect, or shchivna does not take effect till after the person dies. Special to Chachamim, because once you're dead, it's hefkin, or somebody ashes it. There's nothing there. The Chachamim is special takana. But whenever the Chachamim make a special takana, it has to have a hand and fist. So if a shchivna is giving a matana, right, he's giving away matanas, but it doesn't take effect till after he dies, because if he stands up, it's his. It doesn't take effect till after he dies. How does it work? You can't just stand in the luft that I make a takana. It's based on something. It's based on the concept of Yerusha. But it can only work on those people who can yarshin. And since Mori cannot yarshin, then the takana chum doesn't apply to him. So some of the Rishonim asked, not all, but some of them asked, so how can you matchkima give to anybody? You give to a stranger. We had him the whole time. And so on and so forth. How can you do that if it has to be Yiddish? So they say, in theory, every Yid is a Yiddish. If all your other cousins and second cousins and millionth cousins all pass away, somewhere go back somewhere along the line, they're your Yiddish. So since they're Roli Yoshai, go back to Yaakov Avinu. Everyone is Roli Yoshai, so therefore that's going to make sense. But Amadi, no matter how far back you go, he's not Shaykh to Yerusha because he was born Shalai B'Kedusha. And he's not a guy either. In fact, one of the Rishonim say, by a guy you could give a matzah shchimra because he's shaykh to Yerusha. Doesn't be shaykh to you, but he's shaykh to the Inya of Yerusha. But Mori is never shaykh to Yerusha. Okay, so he can't get matzah shchimra either. Let's continue. So what about Iba Mashiach? Just give him straight matana. Give him physically. You can give matanas fit shchimra. Less the gabay. The problem is in yeshiva. He's a yeshiva bacha somewhere. He's not home. And Isa is dying. So Rav is getting very happy. Iber chalipin, so l'chaydi can make a kini chalipin. Ein matbeya nikne bechalipin. He says here that we learned before in Hazav that you cannot be kind of chalipin with money. According to most of them, i.e. agav karka. Just give it agav the karka. In other words, let Isa give to another person. Say, I want you to be kind of this will be the karka, and agav the karka. I want you to be kind of half my son, whatever it is. Less lay ara. He has 12,000 gold and he has no land. So the Shemrei talks, where's he living? Where's he living? Even if it's a borrowed place or a rented place, why can't he use that? So there's anyone, if you want to bring for a raya, you have to get permission from the owner. And Rava went and spoke to every owner of the house that he. This is what they say. That Rava spoke to the owners. Don't you dare give him permission to use your house to give to his son, a little piece, so that he can be kind of the land. I mean, try to understand what's going on here. Even Maimer Shloshim, we learned 2 days ago that Hirchas Timer. No, if you have Isa, you have his Rava, and then we get the muddy here, and even a muddy is not in yeshiva, a muddy might be there, but the money is not there. The money is sitting by Rava's house, and Rava's not going to bring the money to there. When we say less gabe, he's not only talking about the money that be there. The money could be brought there. It's the money. The money is sitting in Rava's house, and Rava's not going to bring it. So therefore, they're not there. So no, let's do Mamish Lashon. He asked me to come. I'm not coming. From here, they bring a raya. The big machlek is a shayim. When you do Mamish Lashon, the person who owes the money, right? Shimon owes money to Reuven. Reuven says, you know what, Shimon, instead of owing me, owes a lady. Do we need Shimon's consent? No, that's not Shimon. Something else. Shimon says Reuven actually owes money to Levi. Yeah, but Reuven owes not. But Reuven owes nothing to Levi. Reuven is just giving it to Levi as a matana. So machlek is if you can work by selling as well. So can you force Shimon, or you need Shimon's consent? So they want to bring an eye from this story right here. Rava said, "I'm going." It sounds like, but if Rava would have been there, they would have done my mishlasha whether he likes it or not. Otherwise, what's the Rava saying? I'm not going. Let him go. Humor them. I just don't agree. Others say, no, Rava would have been embarrassed. It means one thing sitting at home and doing all these cheshbainis and talking to the owner of the house behind his back. But to come there in front of him, the guy's dying, and say, I don't care, I'm not letting you give your son the money, Rava was embarrassed. Now, before you go any further, what do you mean he had no karka? If you remember Trace's stuff from Dollar and Bays, Trace learns from here, a raya, others argue, this concept that every Eid owns 4 Amos in Eretz Yisrael, or every Eid owns a piece of land because everyone has a right to be buried, al-af or tashuv, is not true, because it says here, Les Lekake, he had no land. What do you mean he had no land? Everyone has 4 Amos in Eretz Yisrael. The other Rishonim say that we do have 4 Amos, but he's a Geir, and the Geir is not entitled to 4 Amos. Or Yaitim Mitzrayim, exactly, and not good. That was the whole ma'aseh of Yudam Seira. Why he didn't know about Pesach. Oh, talk about another thing. Anyway, here we have a new kinyan called Kinyan Oidisa. I don't know if you ever heard of it. It's called Kinyan Oidisa that I'm moided. Big machlek is a shaynim, and there's a long tzach chayish, and it took Kufsadig Aleph. What exactly is Kinyan Oidisa? I am moided, I owe you $100. So what's that? Is it ne'emanis or is it a chiyuv, as chayvus? In other words, you believe me. If I say I owe you $100, I go to the game dummy, and therefore I owe you the money. Or the pshat, doesn't matter if I owe you or not. I'm now committing myself. In other words, if I'm saying I owe you $100 because Taki, you once lent me the money, I owe you $100. So if we can prove somehow or another it's not true, he never lent him the money, then there's nothing there. But the other opinion says no. Kinyan, that itself is a kinyan. And it's a chiddush that I, with my words, can make a kinyan just giving it over to you. So why couldn't Isa just say, I'm made it belongs to a Mori? Who asked this question of Ika Be'aram? When he asked in the base of Medrash, so Rava, one mistake he made. He told everyone what going through his mind. So this Ravika asked the question, and Rava didn't know the answer. He found a way for Isa to get the money. Somebody in the base of Medrash ran straight to Isa and said, Isa, be made that the money belongs to Rav Mari, which he did, and Rava lost all the money. So, Loide Isa, the halazuz Rav Mari did. The Knin, the Baid Isa, became Isa. Adahachi nafik Isa be Isa, right? When somebody rather told Isa did it. Ik bid Rava was upset. Who had the chutzpah to tell them what to do? And it's a difficult story to understand. It's a difficult story to understand.
He's so upset.
All that is so hard. Now we know from Gemara Brachas that at the end, Rob had a hard time because this guy, the Bahedra gave him all this. Lost because this buying places Chalim gave, he lost everything. Until the end, the Rebbe started paying him, his luck changed. But till then, everything he had turned sour. So it must have been very, very desperate at that time. And here again, his luck didn't work for him because he had the money sitting there, eyeing it. The Rishonim here ask a very fundamental question, which the Chayru should have asked from the very beginning. a very fundamental question. The whole idea of Shchibana is hard to understand because we have another concept called mitzvah l'kaim divrei hames. Who cares? Why do you even need a takana of Shchibana, Vora of Kiksuvin, Masur, and Damer? If it's not Kiksuvin, there's an Indian mitzvah l'kaim divrei hames. So they have to find a difference when, and here the Rishonim try to come up with differences, but it's the mitzvah kind of mess according to some Rishonim. It's long cases here. Give three different explanations, but one explanation is mitzvah kind of mess is only if you tell someone else, do this, to give this to them. But if you say, I am going to give, there's no mitzvah kind of mess because he didn't give anybody else instructions. So then you have to come on to the divrei shchibur like. That's one view. Another view in the Rishonim is, when do you say mitzvah kind of mess? Only if he gave it to a third party, to a sholish. Not that he, in the first answer is, I still have the money by me, but I'm telling you, Yankel, take this $100 and give it, and do this, blah, blah, blah with it. That's the mitzvah kind of mess. The second view is no. Only if the money is not here in my possession right now. I gave it the Yad Sholish, and from the outset, I told the Yad Sholish what to do with that money. That's a mitzvah, the kind of mess. And Taisa brings, it's fascinating. Taisa brings from all over Shas to try to work out, mitzvah kind of mess and when. Okay, that's two general rules. Let's continue. Gemara. Shaya kal kosher matos it says in the Mishnah, but if you left behind even one sliver of karka, matanos gemes. Now, what's that sliver of karka? Is a mamash a sliver? The kama kosher. What is it? How much does he have to leave to say? The fact that he left something behind means that he thought he might still survive. So we have two opinions here, and the Gemara is going to reject both of them. Karka, kedei panasos. You know what a sliver means? It doesn't mean mamash a sliver. It means enough that he can live. Then there's a machlek yeshayim. How long is that? Is it just for 12 months? Is it, you assume a person lives till the age of 80 and he's 72, 8 years? How much? Rabbi Yirmiyah metaltlin, doesn't be karka, even metaltlin. Metaltlin enough, if he left behind metaltlin enough to survive, means that he thought he's going to live. How accurate is both of these opinions? Because they're not really arguing. The whole svara is if he's relying on this to survive, what's if he's going to rely on it, good enough. I mean, in svara, why should there be a difference? Karka metaltin. The idea is that he can survive as long as he can survive. Masked Rabbi Yisrael asked a question. He said, "You're both wrong." Yes, you're both wrong. Oh, my command, where is this accuracy? Man da'ama metaltin. I'll ask a question each one. The one who says metaltin, what does the Mishnah clearly say? Yimshayat karka. It says karka. So what do you tell me, Ma'aser metaltin? Man da'ama kedei parnasase. The one who says enough to live on. Kosher tanan. We know kosher who means, and tomorrow we'll talk more about it. Kosher means a sliver. Okay, so Abaye first asks on Abiya's first question. You're being so pedantic. The Mishnah says karka means only karka, not metaltlin. And therefore you're rejecting Rabbi Barabba who said it means metaltlin. So Amle Abaye, karka dafke. You think because it says karka means karka dafke? Let me ask you a question. But now we learn, and we had the sugi and gittin, hakoisiv kol nechosav lavde. If somebody wrote that his entire estate should belong to his Evet Kanani. So since the entire estate belongs to the Kanani, included in that estate is the Eved himself. So now he owns himself, which means Yotze ben Chayrin. He's a free man. What about Shaya Karka Kosher? He writes, I'm giving you all my assets, but I'm leaving one piece of property for myself. Now an Eved, in many respects, is like Karka, because there's the Chalta Moshe of Nechem Machrechim, so we treat it like Karka. Certain things also because we say Eved has no chazaka because it's like metaltlin he wanders about. So in certain respects it's like karka, certain respects like metaltlin. So if he says I'm holding back one karka, but he didn't nominate which karka it is. So there's a possibility that I'm keeping the Eved. You can have all the assets, but I'm keeping the Eved, which basically means you have nothing. Because kol masha kona Eved, kona rabbi. He's lo yotze ben chayrin. Says Hadikam, he's no longer a free man. Because maybe the word karka is referring to the Eved. Comes along Rab Shimon. Rab Shimon says, "Lo olam hu ben chayrin." Even if he says karka, he's a free man. Why? He says, if I'm holding back one karka, it does not include the Eved. The Eved is still metaltlin, walks about, so therefore the Eved is free. If he said, I'm giving you all my assets except one piece of karka, that piece of karka is not referring to the Eved. That means I'm not holding back the Eved. So the Eved is free. Unless he says I'm giving everything to my Eved. Except one thing that is worth a 10,000th of my asset. In other words, he didn't specify karka or metalton. He didn't specify karka or metalton, and therefore it could be what I'm holding back is the Eved. So you're not free. The Eved, maybe the Eved is not free. And once the Eved is not free, he doesn't own anything. Also metalton. So even though he said in the Tanakhama's version, I'm holding back karka koshu, could be he's holding back the Eved. So what do we see in this case here? Even though he used the word karka, it could also be metaltlin. And this is what this is what Abai is asking Rabbi Yosef. So when our Mishnah says that if they hold back karka koshu, that means he thought it could still live, and you're telling me, no, it means karka. How do you know? That means metaltlin as well. We find instances where you use the word karka, but it's more generic term or descriptive, not a legal term that means only in this case. But Amar Abdina Yosef Amar Abelazar also metaltlin shear H11. By an Eved, we make metaltlin a shear, even though you use the word karka. And Nachman, if he would have said, I'm holding back metaltlin, if he would have said, I'm giving everything, I'm holding back metaltlin, the Eved will be included metaltlin as well. Because the Eved, in certain respects, is like metaltlin, walks about. Right? Goy just saying that chazaka, we said Abadim have no chazaka, so they wander about like anything mobile. It's metaltlin. So even though it says in the Mishnah, karka, even though it says in the Mishnah the word karka, it includes a case where he said the word metaltlin. So what do we see from this Abdimim that the word karka could also mean metal? Then he, however, continues. He says, "The loy also metaltlin shear eitz ksuva." We said by a ksuva that if the father says, "I'm giving a piece of karka to my wife as well as to my children," and then we say that she's meichel ksuva and she takes it from the karka and she gets this karka. She's happy to be equal to all of her children, even though she might be worth less than the ksuva, and she's meichel. And there we say that if he left behind metaltlin, she's not meichel her ksuva for metaltlin. But I also metaltlin she's ksuva. So sometimes it's included and sometimes not included. So therefore, Rabbi says, Rabbi Yosef, what are you being so particular and being so, in our Mishnah? And your medayik, the word karka means limited to karka. I just showed you in the Mishnah and Peah that the word karka, sorry, I showed you over here that the word karka can mean metaltlin as well. So Rabbi Yosef, no kasha. Rabbi Yosef answers, no, don't bring me the Mishnah and Peah to here. You know why? Hasan bedina the karka. There it makes sense why it doesn't mean only karka. Why? Because why talk about karka? You talk about metalton as well. I'm holding back metalton. It could be you're holding back David. So why does the Mishnah talk use the word karka if you mean metalton? The idea the Tanurasha, the Mishnah before says Rabbi Kiva Omer karka koshu. How much karka do you have to own before you chayiv a certain chiyuvim? Koshu. Chayiv is repair. You chayiv a repair. There's no minimum amount of karka. You chayiv in bekurim. You're able to write a prudbul that's a kind of Hillel, that it comes Shemitah when all the loans get cancelled and you give it over to Bezin. That's talking about a case where the Leva has a piece of property, and the idea is if the Leva has a piece of property, it's as if he gave it back to you as a mashkin, and if you have a mashkin, there's no Isav Layigas anymore. Shemitah does not cancel a loan that has a mashkin. I already as if I got paid already, and then I'm going to give you back your mashkin, and you're going to give me the money you owe me, like a swap. So and how much karka do you have to have in order to make a pruzbul? A mashu. And also the kinyan of if I'm buying from you two things, a piece of karka and metalton, I make a kinyan on the karka. This becomes agav is subordinate to that, and I get it as well. How much karka do I have to buy? It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. The metalton is worth 10 times as much as the karka. It makes no difference. So mishum hachik toni karka. So the next Mishnah, which talks about it here, the case of avadim, it uses the word karka. It makes sense. It's being poetic. It's just the syntax lends itself to that. However, in our Mishnah, why does the Mishnah say karka? If no reason, if the idea is he left something behind so that he can survive, that he believes will survive, that's what we need. Masha, if he left behind Masha, why spell out karka? It must be, said Rabbi Yosef, that dafka karka. And the second thing that Rabbi Yosef said about if it's dafka mashu, and why do you guys say enough of Hanossa? We'll learn tomorrow. Okay, have a good day.